morning, good afternoon all, and welcome to today's CC-Webinar.Live Enterprise Keynote and Panel Discussion session, and thank you for joining. We also would like to thank our sponsor, Expereo, for sponsoring today's CC-Webinar.Live session. And now I would like to pass on the microphone to Eric to introduce the keynote speaker and later on to moderate the panel. For audience, if you have any questions, please do use the chat box option throughout this session. And now that's all from my side, and Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Laura, and I'm delighted on behalf of the CARE community to have keynote speaker Sander Barends from Expereo here with me, and the panelists Jasmine, Gilles, and Wouter. Today we're going to discuss about the network as a platform. So rethinking the network business models for the digital future. And we will start the session with the keynote presentation by Sander from Expereo. And afterwards, we'll bridge this into the interactive panel session. So Sander, I think the floor is yours. So please take it away and inspire us. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Let me start with sharing my screen for the presentation. So, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today. And thanks, Laura and Vida from CARE community to give us the chance to sponsor today's sessions, and also welcome to all the other panel members for later in the panel session. I want to start with a short introduction on myself. My name is Sander Barends. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Expereo. And Expereo is the leading managed service provider specialized in SD-WAN, SASE, and internet access services globally, helping enterprises with their transformation from classic IP MPLS networks to a cloud internet-centric SD-WAN environment. Today's topic is the digital workplace. And coming out of this global pandemic, we've all been struggling to get the teams all online in order to continue our day-to-day operations, and a lot of enterprises are now thinking about what is going to be next when we come out of this pandemic. What's the new environment going to be? Planning towards SD-WAN, cloud centricity, has been happening for many years, and you could probably argue as well that working from home has been something that has been available for a long time as well. I've been in the telco industry since the mid-90s, and internet has been around probably as long as that, and I was always able to work from home with some sort of security application. But you probably can think about argue that working from home is not the same as a digital workplace, right? The digital workplace is more about being able to work from any place. It's effectively putting together a whole set of processes and tools and network so that your employees can collaborate very well together, that there is a seamless experience across all the different applications that they use, and that the infrastructure that needs to support that effectively has a similar setup regardless where the employees are. Do you need to come to the office to do typical work that you could do at home, like for instance reading your emails? No, there's probably no need, but you can't eliminate the effectiveness of a face-to-face meeting where you can see somebody's reactions to what's going on, and that collaboration is very important. So it starts, if you want to go into a digital workplace, with some proper planning, and you're probably not going to get it right the first time around. So be open and flexible that you're going to have to go through a few iterations in order to get that working. Yes, you need to support this with robust and secure technology. The seamless moving from one application to the next in order to get your employee experience great, which is just as important as your customer experience. For that, you need a tool set that really works. So think about a single sign-on kind of environment with cloud native applications. There's probably no need anymore, arguably, for rigid IPsec clients to be put on people's laptops in order to access the applications. We can put this in a much more flexible environment. So I think the key word is that what a digital workplace will enable you to do is to have a lot more insight in what's going on and increase the collaboration that you can do between all of your employees, as well as arguably with suppliers and customers. Finding that sweet spot will be different for every enterprise, as you're all using a different set of applications. But it starts with some strategic planning, your governance and your operational management. How do you want to put that in place? Make sure that there is proactive support for the whole adoption of this new way of working. If I look at how we did it here as Expereo, the office environment where I sit today has completely changed, and we changed all of the desk into flex desks, and also made that whole working environment very, very seamless. So expecting that when the Netherlands comes out of the pandemic, that our teams will work from home when that makes sense, and can come together and work from the office in a very seamless experience. That all enterprises are moving into a internet-centric, cloud-native environment. I think that's no longer a topic that needs to be argued. You can see that the leading technology providers and the leading analysts are all seeing that this is all being embraced now, and that customers are moving to public cloud applications, or enterprises move to public cloud applications, and that more and more enterprises that have already started to work with SD-WAN, probably in an early phase, or some of them are quite extensive deployments already. You now see that SASE, the Secure Access Services Edge, is being implemented into that architecture as well, in order to give that flexibility that regardless where you are, you will have access to the applications. And again, this supports that whole digital workplace environment. So what can we do as Expereo for you? As Expereo, it's our mission to connect the enterprise users, regardless where they are, in the most efficient and secure way, all the way from the user, the edge, to their cloud applications. In terms of how we can secure the edge, you were looking at SD-WAN and SASE type of solutions in order to get that going. But nothing works without a properly working underlay. It is that internet access suite that is so important. And now that you can be anywhere, we are and have always been very flexible when it comes to any last mile technology that becomes available. So you find a broad fixed internet suite on dedicated internet access, broadband internet access across coax, cable, fiber and copper. But you also see that the mobile internet access services are becoming more and more robust. And so also on that suite, we have a full global availability of global mobile internet access services in order to complement that site solution that sets up that underlay for your connectivity needs. But we also realize that sometimes there is already connectivity there, quite often bought by the local IT teams. And those connectivity services might still be under contract, and you don't want to expand your budget too far either. So bring your own access is something that we can support as well. We can take over the operational management of those lines, so that in the tooling that you get from Expereo, you will have a seamless overview and a global overview of all of your sites and services, regardless whether that was provided by Expereo or we are managing infrastructure that you have already. I already mentioned earlier that user experience is just as important as your customer experience. And when you move with your applications into the cloud, making sure that those cloud applications work in an optimized fashion so that the users are happy to work well with those applications is key to get the productivity high. Some analysts have looked into companies that whereby the users are not very happy with the IT environments. They are up to 2.5 times less productive than employees that work in an environment where they feel happy and where they can collaborate well. So making sure that the investments that you make on your applications are properly supported and underpinned by your connectivity and your security suites is key in order to get that user experience as high as you can get it. Well, we support our global clients with all of our local capabilities. We have smart hands all around the world, clearly the global reach, and with our partners in country, we can also take care of all the logistics that you need. Well, as Expereo, we've always been investing in making sure that we do the right things for our clients and future clients, but we also, and if you look at the last year, we continue to do that investment in order to make sure that we serve you better. You've seen maybe in the news that starting in June, July last year, we bought ComSafe, Global Internet, and Vidence, and all of those acquisitions play a very important role either on our automation, which was for ComSafe, or making sure that we have a larger install base and a larger supplier base to support the local internet connectivity options, which helped with the global internet acquisition, and on the SASE and SD-WAN deployments and that experience, and making sure that you have the best support there. Vidence, which is the last acquisition, really helps to get us there. All of this we bring to you into a single overview, and we call this Expereo.1, where you can assess whether what you have if that is really fit for purpose, is this working for you. Based on that data that we provide to you, we can jointly make decisions on how to further expand and improve the connectivity, the optimization, or the overlay SD-WAN SASE services, so that it works for you and for your users. Well, all of this, and also what we're going to talk about later in the panel session, what's happening with the network. It all depends at the end of the day about that last mile, about that connectivity to your network, to the internet. And this is where Expereo has over 17 years of experience now, and we continue to build out on that expertise. And for everybody that wants to know more about what we can do and how we can help you, feel free to visit our website at expereo.com, where you can always reach out to us. And with that, I want to finish today's presentation. If there are any questions, happy to answer some. If not now, feel free to contact us after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sander, and thank you for giving a deeper insight of Expereo, and congrats with all the takeovers and acquisitions you made over the last, let's say, 9-10 months. So I know for sure that it has been an exciting road for you guys, and building on your network and increasing quality and especially the quality for service for your end customers is key for you guys. So again, congrats on those acquisitions and your extended service portfolio. Coming to your presentation, we had in the chat box, and I would like to thank Dick van Schoneveld for that question. One question appeared, Sandra, and if you would please be so kind to answer it. The question from Dick is actually, why outsource to a managed service provider? SaaS and IaaS themselves are a form of outsourcing. Why should an SD-WAN solution be any different?
Well, thanks for that question, Dick. And well, when you start making choices on your SaaS and IaaS environment, if we look at our customers that have a global footprint, you will see there are many different applications that are still in the network itself as well. Not everything is always on the public environment, and also site-to-site communication remains very important. You want to make sure that you secure that in a proper way, and to access all of those SaaS and IaaS, you do need connectivity to the internet, and the internet itself is not one big happy cloud, right? So here you need further insights in order to make sure that you've chosen the right local connectivity options and that the routing to your SaaS and IaaS is in an optimized way. And I'm sure that later with Wouter, we talk also about the role of internet exchanges that are key in order to make all of that happen in the best possible fashion. A managed service provider like Expereo can help you with that, because we don't expect that every enterprise is an expert in global internet access, global routing options, as well as being able to mix and match legacy applications that sit in a closed environment and combine that seamlessly with applications that you have in a more public environment. So I think that's where the role of a managed service provider really comes into play. And on top of that, to do this in a local breakout environment, you will see that per country you will require a multitude of ISP relationships. For a typical enterprise, that's a lot of work as well to manage all of those relationships, to do the financial clearing for that, but also the operational management, right? And this is where fit for purpose and to make that assessment if that continues to work for you, if you outsource that to a partner like Expereo or a managed service provider who can do that for you to make sure that you can focus on your business and your users and your customers to get the productivity high, to get the growth in there, and then the managed service provider will take care that the nuts and bolts of everything that needs to be in place to make that work are all working as per your requirements.
Okay, thank you, Sander. Because you mentioned that not all the enterprises will need you or a company and the managed service providers like Expereo. But in how many countries are you now? Because I think the demand is still big enough for you guys. How many countries are you around the world?
Roughly 200 countries. Depends how you count it. Yeah.
Only 200 countries. Okay, so the demand is still there to make sure that that a specialist is there, and they can go to you or to Expereo.com to make sure that all the questions will be answered. Thank you so much, Sander. Now, for all of you out there, I'm so much delighted to have to bridge this actually now into our panel discussion. So Sander will stay on board, and I would like to give a moment to Jasmine, Gilles, and Wouter. Very honored to have you all on this panel. A quick moment to introduce themselves. So Jasmine, if I may start with you. So welcome to London, and please.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Yasmin. I'm one of the senior consultants at STL Partners, a research and consulting firm focused on the telecoms industry. So hopefully I'll be able to bring that perspective in working with telecoms operators and other technology companies around new growth areas and opportunities for business model innovation.
Thank you, Jasmine, and I'm absolutely sure you can contribute with very valuable information for all of us here, because by the end of the day, you write the strategy, so you know what's coming. So thank you very much for being here. So now I'm going to Gilles, please.
Yeah, hi Eric, I'm Gilles. I'm a senior network architect at Johnson & Johnson. I'm based in Belgium, but I'm looking at the global network of Johnson & Johnson. And what we are doing at this moment, we're really transforming our network, and I would say even in a more rapid pace. So it's a never-ending story, and we are going through a whole journey of transforming our network to what's called in the industry the software-defined network approach. And the reason is because J&J is already for a number of years adopting more and more IaaS and the SaaS service. So there is a need to transform our network to bring our user closer to where the workloads are. And that's what I'm looking at, and I'm happy to participate in that panel.
Thank you, Gilles. And I can imagine, like a huge global company like Johnson & Johnson, a family company, is of course up to date and up to speed to make sure that the network works, because you're, as I mentioned, you're a global company and you're around the world. So thank you for joining as well, Gilles. And last but not least, we go to Wouter. Wouter, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, all. Good afternoon, or even good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Yeah, my name is Wouter Ensing. I work with the Amsterdam Internet Exchange, where I'm responsible for business development. The internet exchanges are kind of the building blocks, the building bricks of the internet, of the interconnectivity as everyone uses it today. And as being one of the leading internet exchanges in the world, we are constantly looking at new business models, new partnerships, new services. The world is changing rapidly. The topic we touched today, from traditional probably WAN networks to possibly 100% cloud, who knows, but it requires a lot of interconnectivity between parties, and that's where we play a role. So happy to see if I can add some value to the discussion.
Thank you, Wouter. And I think we all know, without you guys and the other internet exchanges around the world, we are nowhere. And we cannot work from home. We cannot do anything. And it's like our important as food and water almost. So thank you for being on this panel. And guys, Sander, he introduced himself already, CCO of Expereo. So yeah, we're gonna discuss again, to repeat it quickly, network as a platform. So we're gonna rethink actually the network business models for digital future. So if I may start, and Jess, if I can refer this to you. I mean, over the last couple of years, we saw the move into the cloud as one of the main trends within the ICT and telco hemisphere. So even more now, accelerated by the pandemic. So what developments did you see from your perspective, and what's your view?
Yeah, I think, with the pandemic and, with the cloudification that has already been underway pre-pandemic, I think what we've really seen is a major acceleration in the priority levels, particularly for more automation and also leveraging AI and ML and analytics, particularly from an operational perspective. And I think from the telecoms operators' point of view, they're really trying to prioritize, trying to offer solutions to their enterprise customers to enable greater agility and also to provide a means of support for that. And it's a tricky thing if you're trying to create, for example, a distributed home worker network that combines the services available to the homeowner with the essential services that meets the business requirements. So I think whether that's work from home or remote working solutions, I think that has seen quite a significant uptick. And from the operator's perspective, they're trying to understand, okay, well, how can we leverage some of these capabilities like automation and AI to provide much more enhanced services to their own customers themselves.
Okay, thank you, Wouter. Well, from your perspective, from an IX, what are your views? What do you see?
Well, I think traditionally a lot of traffic has been moved within WAN networks. Secured networks, private networks, fully managed by typically the tier 1 providers, as we know them. And although there was probably from a technical perspective and from a security perspective an ideal world, it is, but it was fairly expensive. And what we've seen, I guess, is that the drive towards more flexibility, lower cost, and etc. Has moved fully to kind of internet built services using the public internet, but the public internet as such has a few downsides. So it's kind of moving from one side to the other. Security, quality. It's not guaranteed. I'm not going to suggest that the public internet is necessarily a bad place, although there is quite a lot of bad out there. It is uncontrolled. It is unsecure. It's intransparent. And basically from there, we kind of see a shift back, I guess, to also enterprises wanting to have more control over, where does that traffic flow? does it flow in a safe environment? So yeah, it's kind of moving from one side to the other and then moving back, and that's where SD-WAN in my view plays an important role, because it kind of finds the good of the traditional WAN networks on the public internet. And the trend has been, and Sander has pointed it out with some stats, and Jasmine obviously confirms it as well. The applications and the content we are looking for are more and more available in some sort of cloud rather than in the network itself. So there is a hugely increased demand for good, safe connectivity. I mean, if we look at our statistics over the last let's say 12 months or so, when we've had this pandemic, there's been an increase of 40%. So there is a huge demand for connectivity, and those typical applications are not in the network of the customer itself anymore. They're elsewhere, so it needs to be connected. And yeah, that's where SD-WAN, managed services, all kinds of new business models have popped up and play an important role, I guess.
Oh, I can absolutely reveal to that. Gilles, Wouter was mentioning the public internet and the control and the safety. Is that something that plays on with globally at Johnson & Johnson? Well, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have seen with our application landscape is, let's step back maybe 20 years back, where applications were like monolithic application. And so we start on a journey to move more and more things to the cloud. It didn't happen like overnight. So there was first rationalization of application, consolidation, then came all the virtualization. And at that moment, we were in fact ready to go to the cloud and cloudify much more our application. And in the first step, it was more like at very specific location in the world. So it was not really fully distributed. What we are seeing now is two things, is that we are going more and more to an approach where we are distributing this much more. So bringing it closer to the end user. Why? Yeah, the pandemic is one of the reasons. We have now more and more distributed workforce that spread all over the world. So it's not only anymore about securing, your private perimeter. It's also about securing your workforce and being able to secure, at the home office and also manage that home office. So that's one of the things that we're seeing, and we are looking really how to do that. So it's not anymore going to be purely based on, I would say, hardware infrastructure. It's going to be probably also agents sitting, on the laptop of the end user that will make the decision. Now, the challenge that we'll face here with those new technologies, how to, combine network policy together with security policy and manage this holistically across all this distributed workforce. Even IoT, J&J is also going from a business from pharmaceutical sector producing pills to more service oriented. So we'll maybe have more devices that are even not in our premise anymore. We will have to secure that service. So that brings, the challenge of how do we do that? Is SASE model the right way? How do we do that direct cloud access? We are looking more and more maybe to treat everything as the internet, when it's just an internet being private or being public, we'll have to treat this the same way. That's the journey we're going through at this moment and the evolution that we see but it's not going to happen overnight. It's like, a decade, probably a journey.
Okay, so thank you, Gilles. So Sander, can the network become fully cloud native? Is that the direction?
Well, I do think that a lot of the intelligence that makes up a network will be in the cloud eventually. You see that with SD-WAN today, the edge devices play a very, very important role. Depending on the technology that you use for your SD-WAN, you see that with some SD-WAN vendors, some security that already sits all in the cloud. And I think SASE is kind of bridging these two together now, so that as an enterprise you can start making choices. What makes sense to you, what is fit for purpose. Today, which is still a bit of a challenge, is to start combining different technologies together. When technology might work really well for you in a domestic environment or with a particular type of locations, but on your big hub sites and the data centers, that might not be the right technology to do. So how do you make sure that you have the right combination of services, and how do you combine them from a technology perspective together? I think there's still a lot of development that's going on there, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the industry is going to come up with in terms of solutions for that. But we do see indeed that there is a big drive to move it all into the cloud, and I think the example that Gilles gave, that eventually it'll be all internet. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. Eventually, you need a secure, proper connection to the internet, and then with additional security layers and with cloud native applications, you will be able to support your users with all the collaboration tools, ERP, CRM tools that they need.
Okay, thank you, Sander. Jess, is Sander right? Or are we missing something? I mean, you have the glass bowl of the industry.
I would definitely agree with what Sander said. I would say yes, in the long term. I do think that it's ultimately inevitable, and maybe not because the operators want to, but as the entire ecosystem of partners and parties and customers and value chains become more complex, I think it's the only way you can deliver the flexibility, the agility, and the programmability that your customers demand. I think what is debatable, however, is the speed at which we get there, if that makes sense. And I think, there are perhaps, certain legacy services that, might take a little bit longer to move to cloud native because, there's a challenge with the business case, for example. And I think that whole move to cloud native isn't just about, from a technological standpoint, it's also about fundamentally changing the way that you operate as well. And I think that often is underestimated a little in terms of that particular, how that slows down that move to cloud native.
Does it influence the business processes? Is that what you're meaning? I mean, we all full with, let's say, in a complete digitalization of the networks, but with all the beautiful terms we have. So, do you mean that that people sometimes forget that what impact it has on the business processes, or what else? Well, what should they be? Let's say, I wouldn't say afraid of, but what would they watch while making a decision as such?
Yeah, I think it's that move to, for example, how effectively you can adopt, for example, continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD pipelines, and being able to build that innovation flywheel. And I think what that means is fundamentally, a new set of skills. It's a new way of working, processes, as you mentioned, but also about accountability. How do you ensure that across the organization, and not just at the top level, the middle management, how can you ensure that you are, allocating that accountability as appropriate, and ensuring that, you are well positioned from an organizational perspective to take advantage of everything that cloud native offers. Otherwise, you are kind of going halfway.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So thank you for that. Gilles, you are struggling now, or with all the questions you have, especially for you as a global enterprise. How do you see that the network can become a fully cloud native? How do you as an enterprise work with that question?
Yeah, I think there are a number of key aspects here that are important for an enterprise. We are producing value, and we have to make sure that the network can adapt to unforeseen condition. So one of the big things that I think will be important and key in a cloud native network is to build that resiliency, to make sure that we not just don't have business continuity, but also being resilient and being able to adapt it to condition. I think there's still some some progress to make there. Those networks have been built, in my opinion, in a very static way. And, like doing upgrades of circuits or hardware, it takes times. And that's where I've seen in J&J, like, the compute or the storage have been able to adapt, and put this in the cloud. The network has still to go there, and make it more elastic. I think that's really what I'm looking from a cloud native platform, is that elasticity and resiliency that will be built in the network. And J&J is also from time to time struggling with being able to build at scales. Because imagine in our laboratory, we are having a lot of data that we are producing, and we have to transfer that data, between different places, microservice at different places in network. And that has been sometimes a challenge in a network, is being able to tear up, tear down the resource on an as needed basis. And the last thing is, we are talking about, like office user, but we have also manufacturing floors. There we have to still take into account that some of the processes are very latency sensitive. So cloud native architecture should build in also proximity. So we are seeing even a trend now of, of those big cloud provider to bring, in fact, the edge closer inside the enterprise. It's still a public offering, but it's going closer to the edge because of that latency. That's a physical thing that we will not be able to change. So it's going to be more and more distributed. It needs to be more elastic and build at scale for big enterprises, J&J. But there are things like what we see that, in the cloud makes sense to put in the cloud. It's like this orchestration, the control plane, the management of the policy, that can be done in one place. Saying that might remain like it's, the forwarding of packets. The data plane, that's still something that will be distributed. That's something you can not avoid. And security, like I said, needs to be also, being made much more cloud native and brought as close as possible to two places, to the cloud edge, but also to the user, because the network is going to be more, application user centric in the future.
So thank you, Gilles. So Sander, can you, with Expereo.1, your platform, can you address all those questions which from the enterprises comes actually to your desk day by day or every day actually? So I mean, it's your pitch.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of questions, and we only have a little bit of time left.
Elasticity.
Elasticity. I'll do my best.
Let's focus on the elasticity.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that we see a lot. What can you help? What can you do to help us to create that flexibility, that on-demand aspect that you have of your cloud applications, which all sit in the data center cloud environment? What can we do in order to further extend that towards the edge as well? And I think this is a very relevant question, but also a very difficult one to solve. Because in order to get connectivity going, you still need that last mile part, and then to make sure that is fit for purpose, you want to have that high availability for your critical sites as high as possible. So you also look at diversity and demonstrable diversity between those. And if you are bound to just terrestrial connectivity services, fiber, copper, or primarily fiber, then you always have that constraint on that last mile. There's only so much capacity that you're willing to pay for, and it's not really on demand. You see that some countries start to evolve there a little bit already, like Jazz, I like to talk about the UK now, where you see that our UK partners are no longer doing the low bandwidths to us, right? So the minimum that we can take is a gig. How we split it up is completely up to us now. But this is the first step in the direction of getting that flexibility in the last mile, but it's still extremely fragmented, and only a few countries start to make some advances there. I do think, however, with the 5G technology maturing in the near future, that will be the first step in that more flexible bandwidth arena. You see that what we do with 4G today is still very much dependent on the signal strength, on how much capacity we actually can ramp up and make available, but it's also very limited to let's say somewhere around 100 meg if you're lucky. With the 5G technologies, we're doing some early trials there. We'll probably be able to scale that up in a much more controllable fashion as well, as that is what 5G allows you to do, to put that effectively the class of services again in a wireless last mile environment. So we'll get there, but it's going to be a long journey before we have the flexibility that cloud and applications can give you, because they are in a data center environment. Capacity is not really constrained there. On the last mile, we still see that.
Okay, thank you, Sander. And I'm a strong believer of wireless SD-WAN, so that will be maybe Jess, you can agree with me. Will be let's say a big ticket item for the coming months. And not years, but months. So we'll hear more about that. Gilles, Wouter, from your point of view, can the network become fully cloud native?
Well, I think Sander just touched a very interesting point. With 5G, Gilles mentioned it before. Many of the users working from home. If we go back, well, let's say 20 odd years, it was pretty straightforward. You would have a network between a couple of sites. You would have your servers with your applications. So the application and the content was in one place, and the customers, the users were quite controlled in the sense that they were in the same network. And if we look at the world today. And this is where Sander made an interesting point with 5G. Your users and home users, your users are everywhere. So they've gone out of that controlled environment into the open, and you still need to get them back. And similar, the application or the content that they're using, is not in one place anymore. It's not in your own data center. It's in multiple places as well. So it is essentially anything to anything rather than one to one, and so there is no choice, I guess, than to move forward, and make that happen. So that network will be somehow cloud native. There's no doubt about it. We have to. What I find interesting, and I would like to ask Gilles if I can. With those users being spread, I can imagine for large enterprises like yourself, and I've spoken to a few in the recent past. How do you control those end users? Because we're all working. Well, I'm working from a home DSL kind of environment today. And I'm part of this. I'm part of this session. I'm part of my network. Do you using public internet, but do you use VPN for all your applications, to secure it, or do you use VPN for only critical applications, and do you literally move that traffic first back to your own site in order to get it to your application, or how do you move the traffic around in a secure and good fashion? And I can imagine that gives you kind of headaches.
Yeah.
No, please.
Oh, okay. Please. Okay, no order. That's really something that keeps us in fact, really busy at this moment. Because like you mentioned, and we are still in that journey, yeah. We had a traditional approach for a remote user to use a VPN on their desktop and connect like that to the network, and from there get to the content. But this is creating some kind of what we call hairpinning situation when traffic go back and forth, and it's not good for the end user experience. We have started more and more, deploying application on the internet, being IS or SaaS. But there were still some of them only accessible through the internal network. Now we are going to build more and more internet-facing gateway, and we're even thinking of why should we have our remote user connecting to the enterprise network? Why can they not connect directly to a service that's distributed in different cloud provider? And then using, that's something we're also looking at, using maybe less and less our own infrastructure. But more the infrastructure, yeah, then maybe your router will build with cloud provider, the cloud backbone that are going to emerge more and more probably between, you know, different cloud provider, like AWS is building his own backbone, Microsoft is building our own backbone, but we are still missing one piece here, is how to interconnect all those multi-cloud backbone. Because I'm looking at this a little bit like, you know, okay, the internet is, the internet is the internet basically, for sure, for a home user. So let's try to get as quickly as possible to a point where we have some kind of guarantee, you know, like oversubscription backbone, and rely as less as possible, you know, that weak link, your last mile. Let's try to minimize this and go, you know, to some more public backbone where we have some guarantee of service, and distribute basically the way we connect our enterprise remote user or distribute workforce. And I think even in the future, if I'm looking at myself, I'm even not connecting myself with the VPN gateway anymore. I'm just going directly on the internet to all those services. I sometimes even forgot that I'm not connected to the network, and then I realize, oh yeah, but that application is in my data center. It's very secure. I have to start my VPN client now. So that's a trend we see, that I think we will have more and more user not connected really to the enterprise private network directly, but more like an I would say a cafe. You know, we are even looking at this for our small office. Why do we still need to connect our small office, you know, to a private network? We are looking at adopting, like, you know, Starbucks models for those office, and maybe even have, you know, more and more user having their own, when 5G matured, just a 5G connection. Why still needing for, you know, small office of 5-10 user, those dedicated network? That's where we're looking at, you know.
Okay, thank you, Gilles. So let's take this to the next level now. And Jasmine, quick question for you. As networks are constantly evolving, and the R&D departments are definitely not sitting still, do you think that artificial intelligence and machine learning are essential tools for the next gen networks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to
In what way? How?
Well, I think the challenge is that, you know, even with AI, I think the term is slightly nebulous in the sense that everyone defines it slightly differently. So, you know, there are some people who might include automation, you know, rules-based automation, particularly in that definition, then yes, absolutely. At the same time, you know, if you're talking about something that's about, let's say, you know, fully autonomous systems or networks, then I think we're a while away from that. But I think you know, the value that you want to reap out of cloud native isn't going to be fully realized unless if you leverage AI, ML, you know, advanced analytics and automation.
Okay, Sander? What's the next step?
Well, the answer is yes, absolutely. And I think if I look at what we have done as Expereo, we've been embracing this for quite a while already. If you look at our cloud acceleration network, which is distributed around the world with our cloud acceleration hubs, this is in order to build that optimized, predictable backbone, while on the back end, we're connecting all of the major cloud applications and the cloud providers, so that an enterprise, when they leverage that cloud acceleration network, actually get the best of both. You get a happy user, well-working application without being too much exposed to the internet classical BGP routing. In order to do that, effectively a backbone over the top of the internet, we use a lot of this technology whereby we monitor every destination around the world and can see what traditional internet would route, and then we override the BGP routing tables in order to force a particular traffic in a particular direction in order to get that high performance out of there. So, and you can't do this without continuously learning, and this can't be a BGP engineer making another entry in a routing table. So this is fully automated, all self-learning, and just as one example where we apply this. These cloud acceleration hubs as well, later this year, we will be rolling out the SD-WAN gateway matrix hubs, in order to facilitate that both, so that you can still have that mix of your private network and the public clouds, get that mix of what I mentioned earlier, your in-country SD-WAN technology combined with your global different type of technology, and start to run that full mesh of services. All of this you can only do when you start to apply machine learning and artificial intelligence. Also for our SD-WAN reporting, we're using this. A lot of this is event-based ticketing, which then automatically triggers some sort of resolution in order to make sure that our customers are not exposed to something that happens in the network, but it is effectively self-healing by monitoring and applying fixes to it. It's a big topic though, artificial intelligence, and that what Jess has said as well. I think there's a lot of different interpretations of it, but at least from experience perspective, this is kind of how we applying that in order to get that predictability and user experience higher.
Thank you, Sander.
Just to add to that as well, especially if you think about, whether, as networks get more complex and harder to manage, and I think even something like identifying and mitigating, network security risks, that security aspect is such a highly specialized field, and there's so many cases where, you have to leverage, some of that AI and ML capabilities to do that. And I mean, that can be in its own conversation in itself, where you can talk hours and hours.
No, absolutely. Wouter, what developments do you see, and do you think that AI or machine learning, or maybe let's say other tools will be essential for the next gen networks?
Well, if we see if we simply look at the uptake in traffic around the world, the gazillions of bytes and messages and things we all need to move all together. A human can't do it anymore. So simply from that perspective, I don't think we have many alternatives than to have machines make things easier. And if we look at how we kind of use it or encounter it, we're working on APIs for our customers to kind of automate and remotely configure their own networks to enable the SD-WAN networks to make many more configurations themselves, and we will see the world move that way forward. So I guess also from an IX perspective, the machine type and the artificial in type and the learning there. Yeah, it will need to happen. It will move forward. It's simply the amount of data which is out there. A human can't comprehend it. It's so.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we may not like it, because I can see some downsides, but that's a different topic.
But that's with every application or any new things within a networks. I mean, let's go back 20 years ago. We talked about it before. I mean, you actually, that 20 years it was we had the spider models, and everything went back from the user centrally and then back to the other user. So I mean, but yes, again, here security and control will be a very big ticket item, absolutely. So Gilles, what's the role of NFV and SDN, and then can you give the audience an element, maybe use case or an example from your side?
Yeah, sure. I think the two technology are trying to abstract the network. That's probably the common part, but there are different technology. They have different use case, in my opinion. So software-defined network, basically it's more about decoupling the data plane from the control plane and being able to have a single pane of glass to manage your infrastructure, your distributed endpoints. SD-WAN is a typical example, I would say, and we see more and more SDX technology appearing for security, even in the enterprise for the campus. We see, I think something I'm looking forward also, it's more like the cloud interconnectivity. How can we make this software defined, like Wouter mentioned, with APIs that are open and programmable? NFV, that's more where you're looking at virtualizing what was in the past, but on dedicated hardware. So those function like firewall, load balancing, specialized function, you're decoupling this from the hardware and you're able to put this as a software. And typically I'm seeing some of those servers that's what we're looking in the SASE model, to put this more in the cloud, because now you're less dependent on the hardware. You can run in the cloud, or if you need, like very high computation, yeah, you can still do it on the premise, but it can be done on white boxes. It doesn't need to be done, on specialized hardware anymore. So those are different use cases I'm seeing, for those technology, and they fit together. It's not the same. They have different use cases, but they fit together.
So let me stay with you, Gilles. So from all the, let's say, X access networks we are bombarded with, actually, because everything is an AAS and with whatever thing in front of it. So are we moving towards the NAS, so the NAS model? And if so, what does it mean?
I think we are moving more and more to it because of the way that users are distributed. It's not anymore purely in your own enterprise. So you need to take this into account, and that's, you need to put some of those functionality more in a network to enable this. I think what's also important as a service, at least for me, is the ability to be able to control this, orchestrate this to a central pane of glass and not distribute it. Because when we are talking about AI and ML, yeah, that's a bit of a challenge. It's the complexity of that. So as an architect, I need, and that's where AI and ML can help me. I need to have this more abstracted in a high level view so that we can make those decisions. And I'm believing in all those X as a service as a way to achieve that.
Sander, so immediately moving to you. I mean, the NFV and SDN, give us a nice use case maybe, and are we moving towards the NAS model?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
Yeah, let me start with the NAS model, because I think you will automatically capture NFV and SDN in that, right? With the users being distributed, your intelligence will move to the cloud, and that will be a network, right? So network as a service will be, well, inevitable with more adoption of cloud services. You will see that the way that the users consume those applications is all changing in a very distributed fashion. You can no longer rely on just edge points in order to make a lot of those decisions and secure that. So a lot of that will move into the cloud, will move into a network as a service. The only constraint, bringing it back to a point that we discussed earlier today, will be especially for offices and factories and such, will be that last mile constraint. That will not move as a service as quickly, but I think the whole usability, intelligence, orchestration of the network, that will move all into a cloud version, and then you will have effectively network as a service. What you're going to put in there depends greatly, I think, on the use case of the enterprise, on how much of that you will do, because you can imagine that certain things, like, for instance, very intense computing, you probably don't all want to do in the cloud. So that you're probably going to bring closer to the edge again, ending up in a little bit of a hybrid. But at least from a user expectation, you will have that distributed setup, which means that a lot of that will move into the cloud, moving towards network as a service model.
Jasmine, are the guys right, or are they should it be more divided?
No, I would definitely agree. The one thing I would add to that as well is, not to repeat what they've said, but with NFV and SDN, with all this decoupling and this disaggregation and virtualization of the network, I think what we are seeing as we look at NAS is the fact that the network is becoming much more accessible and programmable and quote unquote instructable, right? Like it's essentially a capability that you can leverage and extract. And I think it's quite interesting as you think about, let's say, using that programmability to, or network insights and awareness to do more things. The network isn't a black box anymore. It's not a pain point anymore. And as in applications look to interface much more closely with the networks, then I think there's a lot of value in taking that. And Sandra, to your point, for example, with Edge, this is about using those insights to intelligently distribute workloads and bring that compute closer to applications that need, for example, that low latency. And I think that's kind of what NAS is about, is leveraging those capabilities and providing that freedom of ease and choice and use.
Okay, thank you. Sander, you were just mentioning again the last mile, and we have a question coming up from Alexander from the audience. So thank you, Alexander. And as Alexander is actually a last mile partner in the West Africa hemisphere, they do see a lot of DIA demand, but not yet SD-WAN demand from you guys. So how do you see the switch to corporate SD-WAN developments in the future? What's your view?
Well, I think what Alexander is here describing is a very natural journey that an enterprise goes through. So if you are on a more legacy environment and you start to change some of your applications to more cloud native applications, internet access is the first thing that you need to get into place. So we see that getting that internet underlay rolled out and stable is the first phase of such a transformation to go eventually to a software-defined environment. So what I want to say to Alexander is, why aren't you seeing it yet? Well, it's coming, right? It's the next phase. I think especially also the Africa region in terms of new technology deployment is always a little bit later than Western Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. So I'm not surprised that you haven't seen it yet, but the fact that you see that increase in dedicated internet access, that is the first step towards that internet-centric SD-WAN that the enterprises are moving into. So watch the space, it's coming.
Okay, so good news there. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming always to the most beautiful question, which is here. So you shared a lot with us and from your specific experience. But what can we expect in the future? And Wouter, if I may come with you, because I know you're helping a lot of IXs around the world, and you have a couple of IXs around the world actually as well. So what can we expect? But what do you see in the future, the near future?
As in, what do you expect from? What can you expect from Amsterdam Internet Exchange, or what do we see in general in the future?
Both.
Both. Well, I think we're in two developments. I think we are more and more trying to add value by getting closer to our customers, and with that building more value for our content providers, if you will, and an application provider. So closing, even literally closing the gap between the supply and the demand, getting it physically closer. And what we see, and where I think we will see a lot of development, is that traditionally IXs and also as we've focused on bridging networks together, larger networks, tier ones, ISPs, cloud providers, application providers, and we believe that more and more there is an interest from the enterprise market and a demand from the enterprise market to have a better understanding of what's happening behind that network. Jasmine just said, it used to be a black box. It's getting more transparent. we believe there should be, we want to facilitate an open and safe environment, or connectivity from anyone and everything. So I think we will see in the next couple of months, quarters, much more enterprise focused solutions, because I believe they will be able to make more and more advantage of the the general advantage that connectivity hubs like an internet exchange can bring. And I think there's a lot of value to be added together. And I think companies like Expereo can play an interesting role there. So I'd love to have this to continue this discussion.
And we absolutely will. Thank you.
Well, Amsterdam, Wouter, we'll make that happen.
You're very close to each other, so it's easy to have
Deal's close as well, and we'd love to judge whether what we've glued together would be a good solution.
No, absolutely, and Wouter, thank you, but because you mentioned the more enterprise advanced solutions and services. So Gilles, are you seeing that as well? Are you waiting for, let's say, more services to answer say your demand as with Johnson & Johnson as a global enterprise, of course, but I mean also enterprise wide. Are you waiting for something? How do you see the future, and what does it need?
So I'm looking indeed for the number of things, like I mentioned in the beginning, that's kind of being able to better have elasticity in the network. So being able, I compare this to what we are doing today with IS, with a computer storage stack. We can tier up, tier down, and pay as we go. So maybe go to a more model like that, a consumption model based on what you're really using, and maybe oversubscribing just your local access. And because it's an pay as you go model, you might not misuse it, because there is always a cost, using resource. That's one thing I'm looking at for sure in the future from Expereo, from internet exchange, from the cloud provider. Also looking at how are we going to be able to facilitate our multi-cloud strategy, and connecting all those microservices that are spread, that are going to be spread more and more everywhere in the cloud. And for that we need really a strong backbone, resilient backbone, and maybe more insight in what's going on those backbones, so that we can program our traffic flows accordingly, and having those open APIs and interaction with the network, so that it's not like today a black box that your traffic just sent to the network, then you hope the best, but that we can influence a little bit more that traffic. That's really what I'm looking for from all the people, the carrier community, I would say.
Well, Sander, it's on your plate again. So, but Sander, how can you address this, or how can Expereo address this, and maybe also a little bit your view and from the market, the future, and also Expereo's maybe enhanced service portfolio with which you can answer actually the future questions.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what we've been doing over the last 9 months, and the development before that as well, we'll continue to invest in order to serve customers like Johnson & Johnson, to be able to fulfill their requirements. What Gilles has been describing, a lot of that we recognize, and we're having similar discussions with customers on their journeys, where they are and what they see in the future. It is changing quite quickly now, and being a managed service provider like Expereo, we are asset light. We don't have legacy backbones that we have to deal with. So this enables us to be more agile and flexible in the way that we deploy those type of solutions to, for instance, to fulfill that backbone requirement. That's our cloud acceleration service, where we effectively go over the top of the internet to do those things. And we're also looking at that 5G aspect in order to get that more flexibility in the last mile, which has been traditionally for the last 20-30 years pretty rigid. Copper became fiber, but that's all that's changed. So what we're seeing in the market is that a lot of enterprises are pretty advanced in the planning on what their next steps are in transformation. We talked about the digital workplace, talked about network as a service, and I think that's all starting to come together. And as Expereo will continue to invest in that to be able to fulfill those requirements. And that's where we are.
Good to hear that. Jasmine, the floor is yours. Last but not least, as a strategist from STL, live from London with us, can you please enlighten us and share with us what will happen, in the future? What's coming at us, and how do you see it coming?
Yeah, I guess I'm personally excited just to see all of the developments around, as we've talked about this entire session, more intelligent networking solutions that are, robust, secure, and flexible. And, Wouter, as you mentioned, sort of the integration of different types of networks to support more of that, hybrid networking to provide that single pane view that's, easy to manage, easy to customize, etc. And I think even with everything that we've discussed today, which is only obviously, we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. And I think there's plenty to come in the near term and the longer term. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few months.
Okay, thank you so much. And with this, I would like to thank the audience. I mean, we're here at the Expereo sponsored care community session at the Webinar.Live. We were discussing the network as a platform and actually rethinking the new network business models for the digital future. So please allow me to thank Sander, CCO from Expereo for your keynote presentation, and thank you for sponsoring Expereo. Jasmine, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Gilles, thank you for giving and sharing with us the insight from an enterprise perspective, and Wouter as let's say the hub of everything, and the heart of our connectivity in our world. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I was really honored to have you at this session, and also as last, I want to thank the audience for the questions, for the interactive session today. And from me, it's ciao for now. See you next time. Please stay tuned with the care community. There's more to come. And over to you, Laura. Back to the studio. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Dear all, we're at the end of this webinar session, and I would like to thank Sanders for his interesting presentation, panelists for joining and sharing their knowledge. Also, I would like to thank our audience for participating and listening. We are looking forward to welcoming you in our future virtual and physical events. For more information, please visit our events portal. Also, if you wish to sponsor one of our future branded webinars, contact CC team. For fresh content on all updates, follow us on our 4 social media channels. Also, subscribe to our Telegram news channel for exclusive invitations to our upcoming webinar sessions. That's all for today, and goodbye. Stay safe and healthy.